In the mountains of Afghanistan, 4 Navy SEALs moved silently through the rugged terrain. Their mission was top secret: track a Taliban warlord who had been orchestrating attacks against U.S. forces. But what began as a stealth reconnaissance quickly spiraled into one of the deadliest ambushes in modern SEAL history. Only one man would make it out alive, and his story became legendary. But the truth behind Operation Red Wings is darker, more complicated, and far more tragic than Hollywood ever showed. It was June 2005. The war in Afghanistan was intensifying, with insurgents carrying out deadly attacks from mountain strongholds. One name stood out: Ahmad Shah, a local Taliban leader who commanded a militia known as the Mountain Tigers. Shah's men had already killed Marines and terrorized villagers suspected of helping U.S. forces. Eliminating him became a priority. The job fell to a SEAL team led by Lieutenant Michael Murphy, with Marcus Luttrell, Danny Dietz, and Matt Axelson. Their mission: infiltrate deep into enemy territory, locate Shah, and call in air support to take him out. It was supposed to be a straightforward reconnaissance. Quiet, surgical, and clean. But war rarely goes according to plan. On June 27, 2005, the 4 SEALs were dropped by helicopter into the Hindu Kush mountains of Kunar province. The terrain was brutal steep cliffs, dense forests, and thin mountain air that made every step exhausting. They hiked for hours, carrying heavy packs, searching for a vantage point overlooking Shah's suspected hideout. By nightfall, they had eyes on the village below. For now, the mission seemed under control. But the next morning, everything changed. As dawn broke, the team heard the sound of bells. Emerging from the trees were several Afghan goat herders, walking directly into the SEALs' concealed position. The SEALs faced an impossible choice: kill the herders and guarantee secrecy, but risk moral and legal consequences. Or let them go and almost certainly be exposed. After tense debate, Lieutenant Murphy made the decision that aligned with U.S. rules of engagement: release the herders. It was the honorable choice. But it was also the fatal one. Within hours, the SEALs' worst fears came true. Taliban fighters were swarming the mountains. The herders had alerted Ahmad Shah's men. The hunters had become the hunted. What followed was one of the most intense firefights in SEAL history. Dozens of Taliban fighters descended from the cliffs, surrounding the 4 Americans. The SEALs fought with incredible skill and courage, using the terrain for cover, returning fire with deadly accuracy. But the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. For every Taliban fighter they dropped, more appeared. Marcus Luttrell later described the fight as a nightmare of bullets and grenades. The SEALs were outnumbered at least 10-1. In the chaos, Danny Dietz was shot multiple times while trying to radio for help. Matt Axelson took devastating wounds but kept firing until the end. Lieutenant Murphy, realizing the only hope was calling in reinforcements, made a decision that would earn him the Medal of Honor. The radio signal was weak in the mountains. To reach HQ, Murphy had to step into the open, exposing himself to enemy fire. Calmly, he called in their location, requesting immediate support. While holding the phone to his ear with one hand, he continued firing his rifle with the other. He was shot multiple times but refused to stop until the call went through. Murphy's final words were, "Thank you." Moments later, he fell, sacrificing himself so his team had a chance. Help did come. A Chinook helicopter loaded with SEAL reinforcements flew toward the fight. But as it approached, Taliban fighters armed with RPGs were waiting. A rocket struck the helicopter, sending it crashing into the mountainside. All 16 men on board were killed instantly, the largest single loss of Navy SEALs in history up to that point. Back on the ground, Luttrell, Dietz, and Axelson were still fighting, cut off, surrounded, and running out of ammunition. One by one, Dietz and Axelson fell. Their courage in the face of impossible odds remains legendary. Marcus Luttrell, though badly wounded, managed to escape by crawling through the mountains for miles. Shrapnel tore into his body, his back was broken, and he was dehydrated. Yet he pushed forward, driven by sheer will to survive. At last, he collapsed near a Pashtun village. There, an Afghan villager named Gulab discovered him. Following an ancient tribal code called Pashtunwali, Gulab took Luttrell in, hiding him from the Taliban and risking his entire village to protect the American. For days, the Taliban searched house to house, demanding Luttrell be handed over. But Gulab refused. He armed his villagers and stood guard until U.S. forces finally rescued Luttrell. Hollywood turned the story into the film Lone Survivor, focusing on Luttrell's ordeal. But the real Operation Red Wings was even more complex. In total, 19 Americans were killed, the 4 SEALs on the ground, and the 16 in the helicopter crash. It was one of the most devastating days in SEAL history. The truth often gets overshadowed by legend. Murphy's sacrifice, Axelson's and Dietz's bravery, the helicopter crew's fate, and Gulab's courage all deserve to be remembered, not just the survival of one man. Operation Red Wings was not just a story of survival. It was a story of sacrifice. Lieutenant Michael Murphy was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Danny Dietz and Matt Axelson received the Navy Cross. Luttrell, the lone survivor, returned home and wrote the memoir that inspired the movie. As for Gulab, the Afghan villager who saved him, life after the war was difficult. The Taliban marked him as a traitor, forcing him to eventually flee his homeland. The legacy of Operation Red Wings endures in the SEAL community as both a tragedy and a testament to courage under fire. Operation Red Wings reminds us that war is never as clean or heroic as movies make it seem. Behind every story of survival lies a trail of sacrifice of men who stood their ground knowing they wouldn't make it home. The SEALs of Operation Red Wings showed us what true brotherhood looks like. They fought for each other until their last breaths. And because of them, their legacy will live forever. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Hit like, subscribe to Truth Untwists, and ring the bell, because in the shadows of history, there are countless more untold truths waiting to be revealed.